For this evening, probably it's in some ways convenient for all of you if I already mention ahead that it's possible that we will be able to probably, I don't know, but within the set time frame, we will be able to cover some grounds about Buddha Dharma, of course. It's also possible that it may go further than the time frame, and so therefore, please be warned.
Yeah. 各位佛友晚上好。那么呢首先呢法王就是向这个在座的 Rinpoche 还有呢在座的出家僧众还有呢阿尼们呢问候晚上好。那么可以的话呢就是今晚呢我们如果呢因为时间的这个关系啊，如果可以的话呢我们呢就以呢主要呢是这个当然是佛法的这个提问来呢作为优先的。那么要不然呢就是超出时间的话呢我们会提醒大家。
And it is not a case where I have certain pith instructions to pass to all of you, or that I'm more intelligible than you. It's simply because to understand a simple recipe, it takes time. Since we are time-oriented, it takes time. For example, this arrangement of flowers, I'm sure it is not as simple as just buying a bunch of flowers and putting them together, but there's a sense of sincerity that goes in it to arrange them and to be able to pass on that knowledge to, I don't know, a member of a family, or to pass it down to a friend, or even to the next employee. It takes time, you know. It is, I don't know if it's whether fortunate or unfortunate to say the time factor, to talk about the time factor, but as I said, since we are time oriented, it cannot be avoided, you know, and so therefore that is there, and so therefore it takes time to have a wholesome idea about anything, to have a wholesome idea about anything.
那么呢其实呢如果说今天呢有一个呢非常重要的这个呢指导要来呢教导我们的话呢，那我们呢可以变得呢更加的聪慧。那么就好比呢是一个呢这个菜单，这个菜单呢是要时间的，好像呢比如说我们呢就是说来安排呢就是呢排列这个花朵一样，那么呢就以呢这个诚信呢，就是来做这样的这个排列，而把我们的这个知识啊传达下去。无论呢是传达给我们的亲友，或者呢是传达我们的这个时间呢，都是要有时间性的。所以呢，可以说呢是信或者呢是不幸的呢，都是呢有关系到这个时间的这个因素。所以呢，主要呢我们呢可以说呢还是以这个呢时间为主的。因此呢，是需要呢一些时间来做一些呢有意义的一切事情。
So, having said that, to cover a little ground or small ground, if there is interest, or probably if is not the right way to start, when maybe is a better word, I don't know. Genuine interest comes into being, then time is not a factor. It's something that comes into being, such a thing comes into being for us when we have this physical condition, when almost without having to be taught, one could say, when we have probably from something very mild, if we have if we have something like an apprenticeship, or to get a little bit more intimate, maybe the art of parenting. And then there is a far more volatile aspect where we develop a sort of the idea or the sense of friendship, you know. Regardless of any of those, whether we consider, whether no matter whether we consider them one is better than the other, through those, then we are able to develop some form of genuine interest. So yes, interest. We have in English far more, I don't know if it's a biblical term, such as devotion, whereas in Tibetan we say Möpa, Gupa, and then if we elevate it, then we say Tepa. All in all, regardless of the formality, I suppose it's somewhere along the line of interest. So, this, as long as this interest is there, then time is not necessarily a factor. We simply bypass time. Yeah. The time feels, the idea of time feels short when we have this interest. It simply bypasses everything. When this interest is not there, then even to even 5 seconds feels like a lifetime. Then, having said that part, then of course the title of this evening's talk is about something to do with modernism, how to implement Buddhism, or what the historical Buddha have conveyed, how to implement them, how to allow that to complement our current time. The Shakyamuni Buddha have conveyed countless of knowledge, information or methods, practices in so many forms. And so therefore, of course, if it'll be almost impossible to say what is appropriate for us. The other evening, when the subject was about mind training, Lojong, it was a great access point uh, to allow us to enter into that what is known as the path or practice. And so probably for this evening, in order to cover the ground of how to work with our current era or our current uh, well modern contemporary situation, probably that is still very valid. So during the talk, then we raised several um, questions. We raised several doubts, of course, and during the time of that talk, there were certain, I think, aspects where uh, I was I wasn't really able to answer properly from my feeling, where I think I was a little bit too anxious in a way to deliver, you know. But since we've had that session where we established a few, grounds, maybe tonight we'll be able to explore a little bit deeper. Mm, yes. So now, how do we make it? How do we go deeper? That's the question. Um, it's like peeling an onion, where we think that the next layer may be it, but most likely it's just another layer that we come into, right after peeling. And um, and probably that analogy might suggest something that although it is perfectly okay to correct, to peel when there is the interest to somehow uh, understand what may be underneath the next layer, mm, to have meaning something, to have a very simple interest, but nevertheless, in order that we are not disappointed by the next layer, if we take the care, once again, if we take the time, uh, how we are peeling it, are we peeling it out of sheer anxiety? Are we peeling it out of sheer excitement? What kind of mental attitude is taking place? Probably that would help uh, in order to somehow not to be disappointed when we come to the last layer, in a way. In order to complete this analogy, um, obviously, at the end, we come across that point where there is no layer or such. Um, and that feeling is probably comparable to the idea of feeling that I need to, well, the game is sort of over, you know. And so, therefore, uh, we simply restart again. And so, the only thing that is there left to do is to probably replant the onion so that we can start it once again, restart it once again. So, well, having said that, then maybe we could continue from some of the questions that we didn't cover last time.
We have 25 questions from last time. We covered
Yeah.
3. Before you arrived, we received another 32 questions.
Okay.
So I think if you were to cover all, I think we'll take the whole night.
Okay.
But let's start with an interesting question from Lojong practice. There's a question here that says that, Your Holiness, can you please share from your personal experience and teachings and application of Lojong in the death of a loved one? How do you handle the death of a loved one using Lojong method?
It's I never knew, of course, the experience of having someone that you know in general, and then in particularly someone you know very well, and then on top of it, someone who had an immense impact on your life in terms of your growth and so on. When that physical aspect, when it dissolves, when it disappears, what kind of impact it has on one's own being. It all, I think, the very first one was that of the passing of my middle brother. I think, yeah, I had. Well, English is very strange for me still, because it's all based on tense, meaning present tense, future tense, past tense, the whole language. And so, yes, so in this case, I had a middle brother and he passed away when he was very small, probably when he was 6 months old. Probably that was my first impression of having someone close to me pass away. I don't exactly know the age gap I had between him and me. But my youngest brother, between my present, see, this is the thing with English. My youngest brother and between my youngest brother and the late one, there was not much gap. Probably, well, the minimum 1 year, I suppose. And so, since that was the case, and now what is the age gap between my youngest brother and me? I'm still calculating. So we probably didn't have much gap. And this is not a showcase of how good a memory I have, because it clearly suggests that I don't. But one of the memories that I have is my mother carrying both my younger brothers in her arms, left and right, in the, what do you call it, blankets. And so anything to do with symmetrical things, I always had a very strong interest from a young age. And so therefore, when she was carrying both of them in her arms, it looked very nice, because she had one in each arm, symmetrical. So that direct approach was, I would say very helpful in many ways, even though it created a lot of questions in my mind, of course, because now what does that mean? And I had asked him. I remember still to this day, I still remember very vividly asking him, like in each child would, what does it mean? You know, all those about why, when, where. And so he said, well, death or passing simply means that one is no more. And then I think probably I didn't say why, because that may or that could have made him very awkward. But nevertheless, when I said where or something along that line, then he said, because his answer was saying, what does it mean? He said, it means that a person goes away. I said, where? And he said, well, it's like a person goes away into far into the distance. Then the notion that I have always is that, yes, it's logical that someone can go into the distance, but then eventually they will return. You know? So I said, so okay, but when will he return? He said, well, in this case, it's going away into the horizon or distance, but then not coming back. That's what it means. Because obviously, when you are that small, you are constantly observing. So therefore, you can see your parents and people that you recognize becoming bigger, 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 and then going further, further away, and then simply turning into a dot and disappearing. But eventually, somehow, one way or the other, they would come back. You know, and so you are constantly sort of conditioned to think that that's the pattern. And so therefore, when you're introduced into a unique pattern, that it just goes further, further away, and it's just that blur line that you see and no more. It was very interesting. Yes. Well, not at that time, but now it's interesting. Yes. Or we have somehow neglected in some ways, you know, because each of us, no matter how old we are physically, actually those memories are there, actually. And it's very, very interesting to remember those early memories. Because simply because of what you're used to, I think, what you think is it. And so therefore, something going into the distance and then that reappearing again.
那么呢，这是可以讲说呢，是非常的一个有趣的一个，就是说呢，我们的这个记忆力。所以说呢，无论呢我们呢到这个多老的话，那么呢这个记忆力呢都是还会出现和重现的。就是有些事情呢，可能我们不记得了，会忽视了，但是呢，它的记忆呢还是存在的。那么这是一个呢有趣的一个就是可以呢记得它。
Yes. The very same, well, not to say the same, but very similar patterns actually do repeat day after day. It's just that by now we don't pay attention to them. And like right now, the mother took the baby and walked away for our sake, of course. And rather than having a long distance, she appeared behind the doors. And the such sort of similar patterns does occur actually day in, day out. Just that we ignore them by now. Yeah. We have become either a professional or we have just simply become accustomed to ignore them. And therefore it's just completely irrelevant. Yeah. Well, without going too far away from the question, now, of course, when I was small at that time, when my middle brother passed away, that experience, as I explained, was there. But of course, at that time, I was so small that I had no real time to develop a relationship with my late brother so as to miss him and to develop some sort of emotional yearning and such. Then, of course, after that, as time goes by, then you come across more and more, of course, where you come across the passing of a dear friend or someone you know, someone who may be related to you, and so on. And now in the recent years, particularly in the recent months, then yes, many great friends, or one could say spiritual friends, have dissolved or passed away. And so accordingly, all kinds of emotions rise. And in our own way, of course, because we are all unique in our own way, and so therefore we have our own way of dealing with that disappearance. And I think in my life, if Buddha Dharma wasn't there, I think my take on each of those experiences would be very, very different. Because of the Buddha Dharma and its influence in my life, I'm able to react to each of those moments in a way that is different from, as I said, how I would react if I did not have any Buddhist influences. Because first and foremost, that comes into being having been introduced and having been influenced by Buddha Dharma are naturally, of course, that pattern of from the horizon coming back, yes? So in the form, in a more theoretical or conceptual form, such as rebirth. To simplify it, while that is a very, I don't know if to say very, or although that may be a comforting notion, comforting idea, then having further Buddhist perspective on life, then it has helped me to understand that that's not it also, you know. It's not just limited to that concept of rebirth. Although that simplicity has its own quality, but nevertheless, if you simply say, that's it, someone goes away and someone comes back, and if you just say that's that, then in a tone, in a manner that where we almost sort of in a dismissive tone, then yes, probably one has to say that no, there is something more than that. And so therefore now in my case, I've had the fortune, I have the fortune to be able to have quite a comprehensive perspective, let's say. Although I'm not a professional, nevertheless, at least I have glimpses of the whole spectrum, let's say. I'm not, by saying that, I'm not saying I'm omniscient, all-knowing, all that, okay? And therefore, in English, I at least I try my best to cover that ground by saying, I know, but I don't know. So, so yes, so maybe we can go backwards to that simplicity. And so the idea of rebirth, one could say, as simple as that. Yes, from that, in that context, then meaning if we don't regard rebirth or causality in a dismissive way, or in a hurried, as if we are too busy. This is just nuisance, this idea of rebirth is just it's a bothersome thing. It's a nuisance. So I just want to just sort of say, okay, and let's move on to something more important. That's what I mean by in a dismissive way. Then it is interesting, and we can explore a lot from there. If we are not hurried, I will please mark that point so that I can come back there, because globally and particularly here in this nation, city, state nation, yes, everything is, the whole life evolves around time, first of all, then meaning it's not a negative opinion or demeaning thing to say, but nevertheless, however, I shouldn't say but, I should say however. However, since the whole culture is sort of more and more focused on time sensitivity, the idea of taking time, making time, and giving care to time is or may be a challenge, and so therefore now focusing on such a topic like that of, in this case, the experience of having someone pass away, and particularly someone we know, compels or demands, or it requires that much of care, actually. Yeah, not that we have to go against our culture or mentality, but nevertheless, at least we have to know that, at least we have to be aware that it requires time. Was that clear? Somewhat, yes, because I did jumble up a bit. So, in short, what I was trying to say was that even if you don't have time, it is good to make time. 赚钱 is 是很有用，可是赚时间是更有用。
对。
So it means basically sort of investing from oneself, I think, rather than from the external factors. So yes. Every day, if you look at the chart on the internet, which I became accustomed to during COVID, which which may have become a practice during COVID for all of us, Diamond Princess ship was one of the main things. There was a cruise, if you remember, yes, and there was some, and then I think everybody was focusing on that. How are they managing? Beside, of course, trying to manage exactly where we were staying, in which nation. But that cruise was sort of like a benchmark. So likewise, from now, I forgot the website, since now COVID has become a dream, long distance dream. Nevertheless, they had all kinds of charts about on a daily basis how many people are passing away, and well, basically death rate, birth rate, so according to that, yes, one of the site was John Hopkins something website, where it showed a great many detailed charts about who's being infected, and so who's recovered, and so on. So anyway, the point is that each death, maybe we can consider them as going into the distance, and each birth the opposite, coming from the distance or horizon towards us. And through the simplified perspective, well, if we don't really focus too much on exactly who's coming back, we can probably say they came back. Yeah. But of course, when each of us have our own unique way of distinguishing who is who, then obviously after a certain distance, then we begin to see the style of the walking style, and so on, the size, the shape, the height, and so on. Then we can distinguish further and further that if this is someone I know or I don't know. Yes. So having said those things, I don't know what kind of emotion that is coursing through each of you when I say those things. But what I'm trying to refer to is that, yes, personal experience of mine in that regard, yes, it is devastating, you know. It's that same experience all over again, that someone goes away and they don't come back. But with the help or with the assistance of Buddha Dharma, then I can have a great range of understanding that, first of all, it is just normal that the physical aspect does disappear simply because it appeared in the first place. And then somehow it's not necessary to say, okay, the so-called mind or consciousness, or in English term soul, is somewhere out there, and so on and so forth, you know. And so therefore it's never really gone, it's somewhere there. I think those are probably more of an emotional language. Whereas from a Buddhist perspective, yes, there a clear distinction between mind and matter, or the consciousness and the physical aspect is made, because otherwise we will not be able to have a proper conversation, of course. But nevertheless, from a Buddhist perspective, the mind and matter, or consciousness and the material and so on, is seen as interdependent, or at least explained as interdependent. Explained. I said initially, is seen as interdependent, you know, those two. Or one could say it's explained, conveyed as interdependent, meaning that none of the two, or either of the two, rules the other, you know, governs the other. Neither of them are the boss. No 老板。
没有老板的呀。
Yeah. You know, mind and matter, it's not that one is superior than the other. It's like saying it's there, yes. In order to be able to say it's there, we need to have something that is not there, you know. Yeah. So there is this, of course, classical debate about who's the boss, yes, the brain or the stomach. So it's mutual, you know, it's interdependent. If you didn't have this complication, Buddha could have just simply talked about the body and not about the consciousness, you know. But it's inevitable that as long as we develop a habit of thinking that there is a body, you know, then naturally the idea of the opposite comes into being. It's inevitable. So in that context, yes, the physical aspect can and does, or one could say will, dissolve. And because of it, if you feel certain emotions, you know, to miss that aspect, you know, the aspect that we are used to, should they dissolve, if you feel sad, if you feel like mourning, it's absolutely correct or absolutely okay to allow that. But at the same time, how to say, should we turn that into a rigid culture or a religion? And I don't know, turn it into, well, what I mean by that is that to say forcefully we have to mourn, we have to miss, you know. If that comes into being, is that necessary? Obviously, we all know in this room that that's not necessary. It could be a very dear friend or a family member that was that seemed like very close to oneself, and having gone through the experience of that person being passed, you know, having passed away. If there is no emotion, for example, you know, is that wrong? No, it's not wrong. Either it means that we are mourning probably in our own way, or the other is that we didn't know that person actually. We didn't really know that person intimately as we thought. In short, there is nothing, there is no reason to feel embarrassed or be shameful by that fact. So, having said that, yes, personally, the very dear individuals in my life, as time goes by, they seem to disappear more and more. And particularly the individuals that I know or from my own level, who I feel are extremely beneficial for others, when they begin to disappear, it is a source of great sorrow. And just like everyone else, even I go through that feeling that if only they could remain a little bit longer or further, if they could come back. But the very teachings that I have received from my dear teachers who have, well, in this case, passed away, the precious teachings that they have left me with was to say that although it's normal to mourn, normal to feel the sorrow, nevertheless, how to say, don't expect them for them to come back in the way that we are used to. And because we are so used to, or I was so used to thinking of my teachers, my friends, in a way that I was used to. It is as if they had such wisdom, those who passed away, that once they knew that I knew them, they knew that their existence was, or at least their appearance or manifestation was no longer useful. Yes, it's yes. The point, yes. The point is that, you know, we all, you know, our parents or our teachers, let's say, or our disciplinary masters, yes. Initially, they seem to invent all kinds of methods for our sake, for our improvement, yes. They already know more or less that at some point we will overcome their methods. Because we are intelligent, of course. We are not stupid, yes. And so therefore, accordingly, they will constantly shift and change their advices, their methods, their teachings, yes. But once we mature enough to be able to know exactly when the discipline is going to come, we already develop or deploy all kinds of tactics to evade them. We know we have invented all kinds of loopholes. That's when they know that they are kind of mature enough, and so therefore they have to change their tactic, and the disappearance is probably one of them.